Hello one and all! So anyone who follows my channel knows I recently saw Wedding With You and I freaking loved it! But I walked out of the theater with a lot of questions about what exactly it all meant and what happened to a bunch of the characters, so I decided to pick up the light novel and give it a read, see if it filled in any of the blanks, and for the most part it did. I still have a lot of questions about what ended up happening to some of the characters and how certain things happened, but overall I'm really glad I read it. I'm really looking forward to seeing Weathering With You again and just really understanding it on a much deeper level this time. Excited for that. One complaint about the light novel is that the opening prologue, the first 6 pages, basically spoils the ending of the story. And I'm about to do the same, so if you haven't seen it yet, go find a way to see it somehow. Alright, so the first 6 pages, Hodaka on the ferry after his graduation, going back to Tokyo, and he's basically just trying to piece together everything that happened in Tokyo, trying to figure out, okay, did that all really happen? Was it a dream? Wasn't it? And just trying to decide if what he did was right. He actually described some like PTSD-like symptoms when he got back to the island. Like being unable to concentrate or focus or losing himself or forgetting how to walk. Like really weird stuff going on. Not sure if that's just from the, insanity of everything that happened to him, or if that's just, the guilt he's feeling for debating whether or not he did the right thing, whether or not he made the right choice. But anyway, yeah, so like I said, opening prologue, he describes how Hina is still alive and waiting for him in Japan, how it never stops raining, how he went into the world above the clouds, and how he spent a night with her in a hotel, which kind of, spoils the entire freaking story. I mean, seriously, if I'd read the light novel first, I would have felt like no drama at the end of this, because I'm like, oh, I know that he saves her, I know that he goes to the world above the clouds, I know that it's still raining constantly, so what exactly is the fear? What exactly is the thing that I'm supposed to be worried about in this situation? I don't know, just a weird decision. Like I said, that's my only problem. But let's get into the rest of it. So, just a few interesting things. First off, the ferry ride to Tokyo is a 10-hour trip. Freaking Christ. I seriously can't imagine being on a boat for 10 hours. I mean, I've been on a plane almost that long, and it was a nightmare. But on a boat swaying back and forth like that'd be painful. It does explain why there's, sleeping quarters and you can get all sorts of different meals and beer and stuff on it. Because people are going to get hungry after 10 freaking hours. Also, a little more interesting details. Hodaka brought 50,000 yen, or about $500, as his runaway fund. No idea how he managed to collect that. And sleeping in that cafe costs about 2,000 yen, or $20 a day. So yeah, he goes broke really freaking quickly. In fact, when he first calls Kay, it's because he wants Kay to pay him back for the meal he bought him after Kay saved his life. Seriously. Even he has to admit that how absolutely pathetic that sounds, but okay. We also learned some really interesting things about Hodaka. He really enjoys writing fiction ever since middle school, but he's never actually completed like a full story before. And he really loves Kay's criticism of his writing, because it makes him feel like he can improve, become a better writer. And after the line, I really thought, he'd pick a career in writing or something, but apparently he goes to college to study agriculture, which I guess makes sense, given that it's constantly raining. But he really likes the criticism Kay and Natsume give him, because he says it makes him feel like they believe in him, that they can believe he can do better, improve, become a better person, and that's something he didn't really feel back at home. He really enjoys the time he spends with them, and he actually has a really interesting line from the first night. I had a strange feeling that for the rest of my life, even in the distant future, when I was old enough to have grandkids, the memory of this rainy night would come back to me when I least expected it. I just really like that line. Anyway, so he feels, wanted and needed here, which is something he didn't get back at home. And speaking of back at home, that scene of him, biking through the rain like that, chasing the lights, it happens 2 separate times in the light novel. The first time he says, I was pedaling as hard as I could, trying to cancel out the pain from where it hit me. And then the second time he said, I was pedaling as hard as I could, trying to cancel out the pain from where my dad had hit me. So his father's abusive! Yay! At least we finally know why he ran away. He was very vague in the movie, like, oh, it was suffocating, it was this, it was that. Nope, his father's abusive. So that answers one question at least. But that's literally like the only line we get about him. At the end, he describes his parents and his school welcoming back warmly but awkwardly. So I'm not sure if his father continued abusing him, if his father abused him more, or what happened with that. I'm still curious about that. But just confirming it was abuse does clear a few things up. I actually thought he really came off as, petty and childish when he refused to go back home. But knowing, oh, his home was an abusive environment, that really changes things. It's like, okay, yeah, it makes sense he would not want to go back to that place. Oh, and he has a grandmother. That's really all that's mentioned about her. Like, he literally has one line about her, like, oh, Fumi reminds me of my own grandmother. I'm like, okay. So was she on the island too? Did she know your father's abusing you? Was she abusing you? What's up with all that? Oh well. Anyway, moving on to Hina. Apparently she has no phone, smartphone, or cell phone at all. I mean, they mentioned it in the epilogue of the movie, and I didn't really pay much attention, but that's kind of weird, isn't it? You know, no phone whatsoever. I mean, at first I thought it was like, oh, it's because she's poor, but now I'm wondering if it's more of a decision on her part, because, you know, prepaid phones are really not that expensive. Hard to say. Hodaka also mentions that everything in her house looks like it was handmade and gives a really homey, warm feeling that he really likes. And they explain her powers in a really cool way that I really liked. So when Natsume and Hodaka are interviewing the meteorologist, he makes reference to this scientific phenomenon that I've heard about before, but I've always had a hard time believing in because it just seems too fantastical, too magic almost. And basically, on days of huge disasters, random number generators around the world start producing the same numbers, as if the collective human grief is somehow affecting them. I mean, like I said, I've heard this many times before, and I seriously almost can't believe in it. But it's true in this world, and that's all that matters. And so he essentially argues that if the human mind, human emotions can control machines, they might be able to control the weather itself. And that's essentially how Hina's powers work. She doesn't actually control the weather. She doesn't actually change it herself, but more she acts as a conduit. She sucks in all the wishes and hopes and prayers of the people around her, those who are wishing for it to be sunny again, and she directs that power into the sky, making the weather change. I think it's a really cool way of explaining it. And she can actually feel the prayers. She can actually feel the hopes of the people all around her. In fact, when Hodaka goes to rescue her in the sky, she's only able to wake up because she can feel his prayer, his wish for her to come back to him. That reached her even when his voice doesn't, and I just thought that was such a cool concept. I really like that. It also seemed to imply that her own emotions can affect the weather, like the horrible storm they run into the night they run away happened because Natsume told her that she was going to die soon. And that terrified her so much it just started raining really hard. And then later on it turns to snow just because of how utterly defeated she feels. And then she blows up a truck with her lightning powers because she's angry. Which still remains one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie. But then when they get to the Love Hotel, and yes, it is a love hotel, Hodaka mentions he has to hide the adult video menu and a few other items in the closet before Hina and Nagi see them. Anyway, when they get there, the rain slows down and becomes much more peaceful because she's relaxed, she's calm, she's content right then and there. Anyway, then she turns to water and returns to the sky. And I actually misunderstood the scene when I watched the movie. I thought she made the decision. She chose to return to the sky to bring back the sunny days, but here she actually says that she was trying to keep herself from disappearing, trying to keep herself in the real world, trying to keep herself out of the land of the dead. And she has failed to. But she also says she doesn't blame Hodaka for turning her into a sunshine girl for her sale because she loved feeling the happiness from people when she brought back their sunny days. And so as she becomes one with everything, she starts to lose her memory. She forgets why she's there, but the ring that he gave her. But the ring brings her back. It's the last little piece of warmth in her. And it just reminds her of all the time she spent on Earth, but then she loses it, and she starts to cry, and after a while, doesn't even remember what she's crying for, and just such an utterly heartbreaking scene. Seriously. So let's move on to something more fun. Nagi! I freaking love this kid. And I love that when it's Hodaka's point of view and he's just thinking, he always refers to Nagi as Master Nagi. Like, he doesn't say it out loud. In his own internal monologue, he's like, I wonder what Master Nagi's up to today. Which is just so utterly perfect. Freaking love that. We also learn a little bit more about his girlfriends. Kanya and Ayana. Ayana was the one that gave him the wig, and she's in 5th grade. Kana is the other one. She's in 4th grade. They hadn't actually officially met at this point when they busted him out of jail, or whatever you want to call that. But they'd passed each other on the bus stops, and I'm just, again, so many questions about that. Ayana refers to herself as his ex, so I guess at a certain point they broke up and he started dating Kana, but they still remain friends. Not sure, but she does say she really does still like him. She says despite all the pains he's gone through, he remains the smartest and kindest person she knows, and she really does care about him. I also really love that they actually switched last names. When they were signing in, Kana wrote Ayana's last name and a fake address, and when Ayana saw that, she got mad, and so she wrote Kana's last name as her own when they were signing in, like, oh, we can't have the police finding out who we are. Which is really kind of weird because Ayana actually, stayed behind while Nagi ran away. So sooner or later they would have figured out who she was, even if she hadn't used a fake name. But I guess then, it's like a whole spycraft thing that's really cool. Sadly, we don't get too much more information about Nagi, though I do want to read this one part. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Nagi dashed into the room from another door, wearing a dress, and tackled the middle-aged detective to the ground. As Nagi pummeled the detective's face, he shouted, "Hodaka, this is all your fault." He was glaring at me, eyes swollen from crying, nose dripping like a little kitty was. Nagi screamed at me, "Give me back my sister." And this was the last time Hodaka ever saw Nagi. So that means for 2.5 years, he was left wondering, why the bloody hell was Nagi wearing a dress? And I bet you that was the first thing he asked him when he saw him again. Like, "Hey, Master Nagi, why were you wearing a dress?" He had no explanation on that. And I'm assuming he didn't get a chance to change again. So when Hina came to, she saw him wearing a dress. And I'm sure she had a lot of questions about that as well. Oh, Nagi, you're such a freaking awesome kid. All right, next up, Natsume. So she's in her 4th year of college, kind of on summer break. And this part-time job is kind of her running away, as she described it, trying to reject growing up, reject maturity, trying to stay, adolescent forever. But seeing how hard Hodaka is trying is really pushing her to become more mature, to grow up, to actually start looking for a job earnestly. I really love how the light novel describes her as rejecting nobody, very attentive and curious. Like, during those interviews, when she was scrolling down everything the person said, well, Hodaka was like, what the frick is going on here? She genuinely cared about the people who she was interviewing, about their stories, about their lives, about what they had to say. At one point, she's interviewing a woman who, her and her young son saw the rainfish, and she ends up having a 30-minute conversation with this woman about the mom group she's in, so caring and so attentive and so curious about all of it, that by the end of it, she actually gets invited to join the group. This college girl with no kids gets invited to join the mom group. How? Seriously, how? She also ends up interviewing all of the Sunshine Girl clients afterwards, getting their own perspective on, just how the sunshine changed things for them, how it made their day better, how it made life good for them, how it improved all their moods. And this just really hits harder at the end of it, when they take away the sunshine for good, when they choose Hina's life over the happiness of all these people and everyone else in Tokyo. And there's one testimony I really want to read because I really just loved it. This is a girl who wanted it to be sunny, so she'd go to a astronomy camp to flirt with this guy she really likes. And the guy says this: "If you couldn't see the stars from Earth, if humans hadn't known about the stars, I bet neither Newtonian physics nor the theory of relativity would have been discovered. Humans would have kept on assuming we were the center of the world. We would have stayed arrogant and ignorant. And I think we might never have known how lonely we were." I just really love that. Such an awesome line. Anyway, then Natsume helped Hodaka run from the police, and she describes it as being, like, on the side of the protagonist in a story, and she really likes that. And then once her scooter finally comes to a stop, she sat there waiting for the police, realizing that her adolescence was ending, that she was become a fantastic, super amazing adult now. And that's really all we get about her. I mean, in the epilogue, we're seeing a picture of her, and Hodaka comments how her smile looks more mature. And Kei mentions that her and Nagi have become thick as thieves, which, so many questions about that. Like, I just want a whole spin-off movie of those two going on a road trip together or something. That would be absolutely freaking amazing. We also learn a bit more about her father, Kei's brother. Turns out the Suga family are super important. They're super important, well-known family of legislators, and Kei's brother, Natsume's dad, studied overseas and became a financial official for the government. But Natsume doesn't really get along with him. She prefers hanging out with Kei. She gets along better with Kei. And we only actually see her dad once in the entire light novel. He tries to keep her from going out during that huge storm, but she just goes and hang out with Kei instead. Now, it's interesting because Kei also ran away to Tokyo when he was about Hodaka's age. It doesn't really make clear if he ran away because he just couldn't live up to his brother's legacy, but I like to think he ran away because he just found the life of being a Suga restrictive. Same way Hodaka found living on that island, couldn't really breathe properly, couldn't live properly. I also learned a little bit more about Asuka, Kei's wife, and the A in K and A. Really wish I noticed that sooner. She was also from a very affluent family, and apparently her family and his family did not get along whatsoever, but they still managed to, work it out. They still managed to get married. They had Mocha, and then few years later, she died in an accident, though Natsume refuses to really go into any of the details or even think about the details of what happened there, just saying that it's super complicated. Curious about that, but alright. Natsume says, though, that Kei is still utterly, absolutely loyal to Asuka and could never date someone else because he'd view it as cheating on her, which I really liked. I think there's an absolutely amazing line from Kei when Hina comes back and the rain starts up again. When it happened, everyone could probably tell the rain wasn't normal. The truth was, we all known a day like this would come eventually. We'd always sensed that our peaceful lives wouldn't last forever, that we couldn't possibly make such a clean getaway. We hadn't done anything specific, we hadn't decided anything, hadn't chosen anything. Even so, just getting away was never an option. Every one of us had sensed it. Someday the world was going to change forever, and we all just pretended we couldn't see the truth. And this is a really interesting line that really goes to the heart of the story of what this is about. After the movie, I saw an interview with Makoto Shinkai where he said the movie was partially inspired by climate change. And I didn't really understand that at first, but after reading that line, it really hit me. The story wasn't about how, oh, we need to do this or that, or it's going to come, it's going to take us out, it's going to kill us all. It's more about how it's going to come. It will come, definitely, 100%, and we're just delaying it as best we can. And even if you don't believe in climate change, whether meteor strike or super virus, super volcano, overpopulation, sooner or later something's going to happen, probably within our lifetime, that just makes life a whole lot harder for all of us. That really changes and redefines how we view life, how we live our daily lives. And once that happens, things will never go back to the way they were. But there's also a message of hope. In the epilogue, Hodaka's watching people work, and he has this to say. Why is spring here again as if nothing happened? Why are the seasons still turning? Why are people going about their business just like always? So essentially, despite everything, despite all that's changed, people still keep moving forward. They still keep living their daily lives. And this just hit me really hard. A little over a decade ago, I went through something traumatic, something truly life-changing. And since then, everything has been so freaking hard. Even little things. And about a year after it happened, a teacher I'd known most of my life told me that she was so proud of me for persevering, for continuing to push forward, never giving up. And I thought this was the weirdest thing in the world for her to say to me. Like, was there an option to give up? Was there an option to just lay down and die no one told me about? But that wasn't really an option, I kept living my life, moving forward one step at a time, and looking back all these years later, it really hasn't affected my life that much. Every day is, a little harder than it should be, but at the same time, I'm still doing what I want. I'm still living the life I want to live. Even though my definition of life changed, even though I went through something that before it I would have said I couldn't survive, I couldn't overcome. And looking at the movie now, it's just saying to you, it's saying to everyone, no matter what you go through, no matter what life throws at you, you can overcome it, you can keep moving forward, and eventually you can live a life that you're happy with, that you're proud of. And that was just such an amazing concept for him to write about. I really like that. I mean, in stories like this, it's normally the hero, he overcomes a big challenge that changes life forever, blah, 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 blah. But here it's everyone. They're all had to adapt. They're all living their lives. They didn't just, lay down and die because the rain kept coming. They're still pushing forward. They're still trying to live. And it's just absolutely amazing. All right, anyway, let's finish up by talking about the epilogue. So Hina woke up shortly after Hodaka, though he never saw her again until he came back 2.5 years later, and somehow she was still allowed to live with her brother. I'm not sure how. I mean, at the end of the movie, when he's going to go see her, he's traveling the same path, so she's still living in the same apartment. How? Really curious about all of that. Like, did the government pay for a nanny to look after them? Are they getting, weekly welfare checks? What's going on with that? I have this crazy theory that maybe Natsume moved in with them so that she can officially be their guardian. That would actually make quite a bit of sense. As for Hodaka, he is charged with Firearm and Sword Possession Control Law, Article 3, violation of the prohibition against possession of a handgun, Penal Code Article 95, obstructing the performance of public duty, firing a weapon at someone, fell under Penal Code Articles 199 and 203, attempted murder, running on the railway tracks, have been a violation of the Railway Operation Act, Article 37. And yet, after all this, he got probation, which is probably the most ridiculous, impossible part of this entire freaking movie. because they had taken into account the fact they hadn't had the gun on purpose, and as such had determined that the gravity of the whole incident was low, and that my inclination towards delinquency was mild. He pointed a gun at police officers, and he got off on probation. Wow. Okay. A lot of questions about that. But it doesn't actually really tell anyone about anything that happened in Tokyo, even his own parents. He mentions a few odd comments here and there, but he doesn't actually explain anything. So a lot of rumors get started. And the girl who he thinks is going to confess to him after graduation is actually asking if he has connections to the Yakuza. Yes, apparently the rumor's going around. He's a member of the Yakuza, and he's going back to Tokyo to lead them into victory. And yet when he crushes her hopes, when he says, oh no, I just had a hearing in Tokyo when I was arrested, that she's like, oh, that's so cool, you're like an action hero. Wow, okay, they have a very low bar for action hero on this island, apparently. Also, apparently, a third of Tokyo is now underwater, and yet it's still the capital. I feel like if, a third of Washington, D.C. fell into the swamp upon which it was built, we'd change capitals, move it to New York City or something. Japan has other important cities. What about Shibuya? Can that be the new capital? It just feels kind of weird to keep a sinking city as the capital. But, they are still fighting back. They're building up levees and stuff, try to push the water back, try to keep other areas from flooding. So, who knows? Maybe in another 20, 30, 40 years, Tokyo will go back to being what it used to be. Hard to say. He also decides he's going to go study agriculture because that's important because of the change of climate, which I guess makes sense. I really thought he'd become a writer after that, that line in the early part where he was, so happy with Kei criticizing his writing because it made him better at it. I know, I guess being a good writer is important for writing research papers when you study agriculture. Not much more to say about Fumi, except that on her counter is a picture of her grandson's wedding. Yeah! That means Mitsuha and Taki got married in the 2.5 years, which actually creates a very weird timeline. That means that between the time where Hodaka meets Taki and the time where Hina comes back from the sky world, they had to have their encounter on the steps. Actually, it was sunny that day, meaning that their encounter on the steps had to happen on the day that Hina sacrificed herself. And then the next day, it started raining and never stopped. And they started dating in that time period of the continual rainfall and eventually got married in a world where it's continually raining. Honestly, I'd love that to just be a whole spin-off movie of them just dating while it's constantly raining. That'd be really funny. As for Kei, he's moved up in the world, but he's still not living with his daughter, though he does have a much better relationship with his wife's parents now, and they're even talking about giving him custody soon, maybe down the road, now that he's really cleaned up his act, now that he actually has a professional editorial company. He also has a really interesting line. He says, the world's always been screwed up, you didn't make it any worse. Which, fair enough. And so then he finds Hina again. He realizes all they ever wanted, all they wished for, was for them to live their lives together. And as he holds her in his arms, he says this, no matter how drenched we are in the rain, we're alive. No matter how much the world changes, we'll live. We'll be all right. Which really goes back to what I said earlier, The world changed. They need to change with it, but they're still going to be all right. They're still going to be happy. They're still going to be together, and they're still going to live the lives they want to live. And that's just a really good way to end this book, I have to say. I mean, yeah, they, flooded Tokyo. They were selfish in that decision to take away everyone's sunny days. People got used to the rain. They got used to the new lives they live. Because when something changes, we have that choice. We adapt or we die, and adapting seems like the far better choice every time. So yeah, that was the Weathering With You light novel. Like I said before, so glad I read it. Just made the entire story so much better for me. Just really opened my eyes to all the little things I missed when I was watching it, and I'm really excited to see it again. There is a manga coming out for this. I'm not sure how different it's going to be. I'm not sure if it was written by Makoto Shinkai or if it was inspired by him or what happened with any of that. But I will read it, and if there are any huge significant changes or just things I found interesting, I'll make an update video to this. I will tell you what happened in it. But just let me think of that all down below. What'd you think of what I say about the light novel? What do you think of the changes? What do you think of my own interpretations of it? So let me think all down below. Be sure to like and subscribe to the next video. Until then,
peace.